And now let me welcome Bruce Pearl to the show, who has finally put his shirt back on from this weekend, it seems. Bruce, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Rob, Jeff, what's going on with you guys?
So every coach has their thing, right? It feels like Mike Bray's got his mock turtleneck and he wears the Tommy Bahama shirts. Hugs has his windbreakers. For you, it seems to be you like taking your shirt off. So when did that become the thing that Bruce Pearl does? Is he takes his shirt off when he goes to basketball games, football games, whatever it is?
I don't know. Back in the day, I'm 61 years old. So when I was in high school, streaking was big. So I've always sort of been a bit of an exhibitionist, obviously. You know what? Bottom line, if you look at the faces of my players, both when I was back at Tennessee and I was out there painted orange for Pat Summitt, and then Saturday, out there in the student section of the football game supporting Coach Harsin, my players love the fact that I'm willing to be with them in those kind of moments, and so that's kind of what drives me.
It's fun, man. At the end of the day, that's what matters, right? You're having fun. So, all right. The first question about Auburn this year that we have to start with is, unfortunately, Alan Flannigan. He's got the Achilles injury. Tough break for the kid. I felt like this was a really big year for him. Any idea on kind of when he's expected back, what the length of the injury is going to end up being, and the impact that you're expecting it to have on him and his season?
Yeah, sure, Rob. Well, listen, Alan was the fourth leading returning scorer in the SEC. And certainly one of the better players returning in the SEC, and probably a guy that if he went out last year as a sophomore, probably looking at a mid-second round, late second round, maybe. But certainly with that body and the way he would work out, he's a guy that could play in the league, and so a tough setback. The Achilles injury, he got cut in the back of his foot, but 30% was attached, 70% was off. So it was a clean cut. And so it's not like a ruptured Achilles. So they were able to surgically attach it. He should get back much quicker than a ruptured Achilles. The target is mid-December. Now, what does he look like in mid-December? What does he look like in January? Wes Flanagan is my right-hand man, my assistant here at Auburn. We're going to do what his dad wants him to do. I don't want to put him out there unless he can be effective, and so that's kind of what our plan is. So we got to be able to put a plan that, hey, Al's going to recover 100% from this injury. I just don't know at what point this year that's going to happen. We got to be playing with him and without him.
Yeah,
and it's a huge impact. It's a huge impact because he's our number one breakdown guy. He's the number one guy scoring through contact. He's my best, most physical on-ball defender, and he's a proven shot maker. So you take that away from a team that, has got a chance to be really good. He arguably could be, he's one of my top 2 or 3 players in a team that's really good. You got to have 3 dudes. And he was one of them.
He's an NBA player, and you're not going to have that NBA player for at least the non-conference, it seems. So, but I think that's the right way to take him in. Like Achilles injuries, you don't want to mess with that. Get back to 100%. If you don't get him back until February, back to where he is, then at least you have him for the tournament, right? So I think that's probably the right way to take it. You mentioned some of the other guys you have a top 3, right? I would probably make the argument the top 2, Walker Kessler, Jamar Smith, somewhere in that area. It feels like this year is a little bit different than years past. You don't have the team built around like these stud guards, Sharif Cooper, Jared Harper, that kind of thing. You got a lot of good big guys this year. That's kind of a different mold for you heading into a season, right?
It really is. It's hard to get quality size, and size matters in basketball. It does. And I've always played small ball, but part of it is out of necessity. We just can't recruit the traditionals. But we've had some great success in the last 3 or 4 years. And so both Walker Kessler and Jabari Smith are an hour and a half away from our campus. That's a homegrown talent. And they saw guys like Isaac Okoro and Shumo Kiki and JT Thor and other guys come in here and have really good success at their positions and say, okay, I that's what I want to try to do. Walker's 7'1". He's not 6'11". He's not 7 foot. He's every bit of 7'1", and he's so long. And he moves so well, so freely. Looks like he's 6'7" when he's running the floor. Therefore, he's got the length to protect the rim. But he's a great three-point shooter. And so I'm gonna able to put him on the perimeter, and he'll shoot 35%, maybe 40% at certain situations out there. That means the opposing big's got to get out there and guard him. That means that lane is open for whatever offense you're trying to run. And he wants to be coached. Jabari Smith's a pro, period. He trains like a pro. He studies like a pro. He's in here every morning, 5 mornings a week at 6:30 in the morning. His dad was a badass at LSU. I mean, a tough, physical, borderline dirty, but a wonderful player, right? And, Jabari probably would have gone down to play for Will at LSU. But he just wanted to be closer to home. He just wanted his dad to be able to come down and work him out a little bit. He wanted his mom to be able to see he was a homebody. And I love that about the kid. Brilliant jump shooter. Really 6'10", real length. Can put the ball on the floor. Understands how to make the extra pass. Going to make it, and has been an unbelievable teammate. And more than anything, Rob, I'm telling you right now, post-COVID, these guys are back in school. They're back going to watch our volleyball team play. They're going back and they're able to go out to dinner. We're able to have Bible study and do things along those lines. Man, last year, these kids played basketball and they went to their room. And it was tough, the whole mental health thing with everything being shut down, except basketball was their only sanctuary. Now the kids are getting to enjoy college. And I think that's a wonderful thing. That's a blessing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's nice to be able to see them kind of get back to some level of normalcy. It's going to be nice to see Auburn fans back in that arena going crazy again. So let me ask you this real quick, and then we can move on past some of the big guys. Jamar Smith is a guy that a lot of people are kind of putting on those mock drafts and way high up there. Can you compare him to someone for me? Who does his game remind you of in the NBA?
Well, I mean, KD, in the sense that as a big, tall shooter that can rise above you and make shots even with a hand in your face. Now he's got a long way to go to develop into anything like that. But that's who I would compare him to right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you have guys that are that size that can make shots, it's such a difference maker. And the same thing with Walker Kessler, right? You got another guy that can make shots. You're not going to be playing small ball this year when you got a 6'10" 4 and a 7'1" center, but you're still able to kind of play that, I guess, skill ball, space the floor, create space in the paint. It's not going to be, the big guy that a lot of people remember is Austin Wiley, right? It's a little different than having Austin Wiley in the paint for you guys this season. Yeah.
So we're still going to be 4 and 5 out all the time. We're still going to spread it. And, I think one of the keys is to take advantage of mismatches. Mm-hmm. And one of the hardest things to do is take advantage of mismatches, particularly on the inside. When we ball screen and roll down in there, we're going to create some mismatches on the inside. The question is, can we take advantage of them? Officials are going to let a lot of contact in the post. You can get in there. They're going to let the little guy foul the big guy all the time. And is that a high percentage play now? It used to be a high percentage play. The closer you got to the basket, the better you looked. Not anymore. Not the way the game's called, not with the 3-point line. So, it'll be an inside-out game. We should be a really good offensive rebounding team. We should be a really elite shot blocking team. We could be we should be a really good zone team because of our length on the perimeter and protecting the rim. So I think some of those things are going to be ways that we're going to have to do it. It's not going to be just with our fast break transitional pace, spread it and have guys beat you off the dribble and that's the way we've been able to be successful the last couple of years. It'll be different, more inside out.
We're still going to need some of that though, because that's what makes Auburn basketball fun. Up and down, get those shots up, lots of possessions. That's what makes it exciting. All right, so we talked about Alan Flanagan a little bit. The guy that feels like it's going to have to kind of replace his role, whether it's Jaylen Williams or Devin Cambridge. What have you seen out of them, and what are you expecting out of them in terms of stepping up in kind of that void when Alan's not there?
So Alan Flanagan, Devin Cambridge, and Jaylen Williams were all sophomores last year. They all got a taste as freshmen and had moments, but they weren't a very veteran team. That year that we were 25-6 and finished second in the SEC, that team could have gone back to the Final Four. That was a veteran team, and that was a team that team was as good or better than my Final Four team. COVID hits, we don't get to play. So the following year, last year, it's a completely different. I had 5 new starters last year because I lost all those vets. Those guys came back and had very good sophomore years. The question is, how will they grow as juniors? Will Devin Cambridge be a consistent 3-point shooter? He's going to be a consistent defender and rebounder, and we call him the bounce man because he's like, he can really get off the floor and he's exciting at the rim. You do those 4 things.
Kind of like a young Bruce Pearl, right?
Nah, we never got off the floor. I always I took charges. I didn't block any shots. I just took charges. 50-50 balls and taking charges. And then Jaylen Williams. Jaylen Williams, here's a great story. Jaylen Williams is a big guard for me, right? And he had a heck of a sophomore year. And then all of a sudden, Jamar Smith comes in. 95% of the Jaylen Williamses, bolts, they transfer. Like, well, what do you need me for? You got Jamar. He's my position. And yeah, right now they're competing with each other, but they will play some together. I just wish more kids were built like Jaylen Williams. He's going to have a really good junior year. And I don't know that Jaylen's a guy that's going to be done after this year. He could be, but he's going to wind up having a terrific career. He's a mismatch inside and he's a mismatch outside. The other two guys, we have three new guards. And I know you're going to kind of get to that next, but when you talk about Wendell Green, transfer from Eastern Kentucky, Zep Jasper, transfer from College of Charleston, two mid-major guards that got a lot to prove heading up and stepping up in class in the SEC. And then KD Johnson, who played for Georgia last year, and KD, number 2 in our conference steals per minute, number 2 free throws attempted per minute play. KT is a very, very productive player. He's a great breakdown player. So you between all 5 of those guys, they're going to have to, a couple of those guys are going to have to really pick up the slack for missing out on Sharif Cooper, not having Alan Flanagan.
Yes, you love those little guards, right? Whether it's Sharif, whether it's Jared Harper, you go all the way back to your Tennessee days and you got Bobby Mays, right? Little guards are kind of what makes the Bruce Pearl engine go. So you got 3 of them. You mentioned Wendell, you mentioned KD, you mentioned Zep. We can kind of talk through each of them, but the guy that's most intriguing to me is probably KD, just because we saw him do it at Georgia last year. You mentioned the steals. He played in the up-tempo system for Tom Crean at Georgia last season. It just feels like he really fits. I don't know if like the mantra of Auburn basketball is a way to say it, but he works there, right? It makes sense.
It does. It does. He does. He fits because he's a downhill slashing. I believe in a 3 ball. I believe in the inside 3 and I believe in the outside 3. And KD can do both. He can shoot it. He's really worked hard to improve his range. He's going to go downhill, and you're either going to foul him, grab him, or he's going to run you over. There's going to be contact. And so he's going to put the officials in a tough spot to make plays. And he's going to initiate some of that contact. They're going to let it go. But sometimes they're going to – and that's why he gets to the foul line so much. And he is passionate, and he is emotional, and he's intense. I guess he's a lot like his head coach. And I'm really loving coaching him. And now he's going to have – I always tell parents, what am I going to do? My son throws his bat after he strikes out. He cries after he loses. I'd rather teach the kids to care a little less than to care. And KD cares. And I got to teach him to care a little less and kind of channel all that energy and emotion in a positive way.
So you do have a couple other mid-major point guards transferring up. How difficult is that for players moving up a level? Like sometimes we see it where they just thrive, like Carlik Jones at Louisville, right? Comes in and he's a star all-conference player. He's now playing in the NBA, right? Sometimes it doesn't necessarily work. They move up a level. Maybe they can't adjust. Maybe the game's a little bit too fast for them. What are you expecting out of your guys? You mentioned Zep, you mentioned Wendell, Eastern Kentucky, and Charleston transfers. How difficult is it to move up that level? And then what are you expecting out of them this season?
Yeah, it's a great question, Rob. But I think you got to play it out, and we got to see what they got. For Zep Jasper, he's an elite defender, and he can do it on both ends of the floor. So I think his transition is going to be a little easier than Wendell's, particularly off the ball. Wendell will remind you a lot of Jared Harper in the sense that when we put him in a ball screen, you're going to have to guard him out there because he can really shoot it, and he's not afraid of the moment. And he's worked really hard to improve defensively. Wendell's 5'11". Now, our guys think he's 5'9", but he's really 5'11". I mean, and so probably somewhere around 5'10". And so he's smaller. And so people are going to try to roll him down and do different things for him, and guards are going to back him in and shoot over him. Wendell's challenge will be on the defensive end, but not the offensive end. But these kids are hungry. They've been on the bus. They're fixing to get on a plane. And they're not afraid. They're not intimidated. Let me tell you something. These guys are not, and they shouldn't be intimidated. They play with these guys in AAU ball every night. They played against them in high school every night. It's just been a while since they played them in college every night. They're not afraid.
Yeah, they average 15 points a game, both of them at their last stop. So they if you average 15 points a game in Division I, you are a basketball player, and it's kind of
absolutely
that's what it is. All right, 2 more questions for you. First one, we didn't mention Dylan Cardwell, we didn't mention Chris Moore, we didn't mention. I hope I get this right. Babatunde Akingbola. Did I get that right?
Got it.
Not bad, right? A little more difficult to pronounce that.
Very good. That's why we just call him Stretch. Just call him Stretch.
There you go. So what are you seeing out of them and anybody else that we haven't talked about yet?
All right, 3 great guys to talk about. And I'm going to use the word patience. If you recruit them the right way, and they understand who they are, they're going to be great. All 3 of those kids are going to have their moments. Dylan Cardwell is as big and strong, as mobile a big as there is in college basketball. That's a strong statement. He's not played a lot. He played behind Kofi Cockburn at Oak Hill his junior year. Didn't play much. He transferred to McEachern High School in Atlanta, and because of whatever that transfer, they didn't let him. He didn't play his senior year. Then he comes last year, his first year at Auburn. It's been a while since he's played. He's getting better in a hurry. And he and Walker Kessler and Babatunde give me 3 legitimate centers at that position. And so 2 of them are going to play. One of them's not going to play as much. But they're all going to be patient. And they're all going to stay right, and they're all going to stay ready. Stretch can really affect the game at the rim defensively, finish around the basket. All these guys are getting better. I've got 3 quality bigs. And then Chris Moore is going to have some impact this year with Al Flanagan being out. Chris was a high school setter at West Memphis, Arkansas, which is really Memphis, right? And he was a state champion and a competitive player, a tough player, but he's transitioning from being a high school center to a SEC guard. Worked really hard on his skills. He's faster, he's quicker. Chris Moore's play early in the season is going to have a lot to do with how successful we are. We go play the Battle for Atlantis. We play at South Florida. We got to go to St. Louis. We got to play Oklahoma and Nebraska in the non-conference. Chris Moore is going to be an important piece for us this year.
All right, so I'm going to end it with this. I think the best thing that you can say about your tenure at Auburn, the most complimentary thing is that there's a level of expectation of basketball success at a program that didn't really have all that much of it before you in the years right before you got there. So you're coming off of a season where it was not quite it wasn't that level that we've gotten used to seeing from Auburn, right? You've made it to a Final Four, like you mentioned, 25-6, had another team that could get to a Final Four. This year, losing a guy like Sharif Cooper, you got some new faces and new roles. You're still going to be a preseason top 25 team. So I want to know from you, what does a successful season in 2021-22 look like for the Auburn Tigers, in your opinion?
My opinion, if we can be in the top 5 or 6 of our league, we're good enough to win a national championship. That's been proven. We were finished 5th in the league the year we went to the Final Four. And I think that's realistic for us. Now, our league is really, really good. I'm telling you, Rob, there are 9 or 10 teams in the SEC that potentially could finish in the top 5 of our league, and therefore good enough to win a national championship. That's a strong statement. I think top to bottom, the league is as good as it's been. I've said that before, but the league continues to get better. The coaching's got better. That's realistic for us. Therefore, if you're in that position, you can win the SEC tournament. You can get to New Orleans. You got to be healthy. You got to keep getting better throughout the season, so on and so forth. But those are all realistic possibilities, and we need to be there somewhere in what I just talked about in order for these to be a successful season. It's easier to get there than it is to stay there. What we've done already was easier than what we're going to try to do right now. And in the future, with name, image, and likeness, this whole dynamic is going to have some shift. We don't know what that's going to look like right now. That's next year. But right now, I like my chemistry. I like my work ethic. It's the hardest working team I've had. And but we got to learn on the fly. They've never been coached. We've never had live ammunition. And we're going to fix it to see how we act when the wind starts to blow and those bullets start flying.
Well, I'll tell you this. I love that we've never had live out ammunition. And in terms of my expectations for Auburn basketball, crazy home environment, lots of threes, lots of up tempo, and at least one game where you end up taking off that shirt after a win. Bruce, it's been a pleasure. Thanks, man.
That's it. The shirt stays on for the rest of the year, Rob. Take care. It's great to be with you. War Eagle.
Before we move on, let me tell you guys a little bit about our partners over at Bet Rivers Sportsbook. If you haven't signed up for Bet Rivers yet, now is the time, because they are offering a $250 match bonus for your first deposit. But what sets them apart is that they require just one playthrough to turn your bonus into cash money. With their Rush Pay instant approval, withdrawing your winnings is safer, it's more secure, and it's more reliable. Now that basketball season is tipping off, get in on the action at betrivers.com today or by downloading the BetRivers iOS app. You must be 21 years or older. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. And while I got you here, let's talk about the Field of 68 Media Network, where college basketball matters most all year round. This is a digital media and podcast network that we've been building over the course of the last year. We have shows hosted by some of your favorite players covering the program that they love the most. AJ Guyton hosts the House of Hoosier. Eric Devendorf covers Syracuse on the scorer's table. Dan Dickow hosts the Gonzaga Bulldog broadcast. We have Florida's Patrick Young. and Duke's Andre Dawkins, and North Carolina's Jamar Williams, and Michigan's Stu Douglas, and Illinois' Deion Thomas. The list goes on and on and on. We have more than 30 shows right now. So hit the links below and check them all out. And while you're at it, make sure that you go check out the Field of 12 Media Network, your home for college football. That was Auburn head coach Bruce Pearl. And let's try this again. 3, 2, 1. That was Auburn head coach Bruce Pearl. And I am now thrilled to be joined by J.G. Tate, who is the publisher of auburnsports.com. That is the Rivals Auburn site. Jay, thanks for being here, man. What's going on?
Not much going on here in beautiful Alabama. It is we're in the middle of football season, but as someone who was born in Kentucky and went to UK, I grew up in a Louisville household, believe it or not. I'm looking forward to basketball season, so we're not too far away now.
So you run an Auburn site in Alabama and you were a Louisville fan in Kentucky. You just love going against the grain, don't you?
I was a Louisville fan growing up, and then I grew out of that, and I ended up going to Kentucky and graduated from there in '98. So my family kind of looks down on me a little bit, but that's fine. We're over it now.
Well, this is an Auburn preview, so we can get into Kentucky later, but I do want to talk a little bit about this Auburn basketball team. The first thing I want to set you up is this. Bruce has come in and he set a certain level of expectation with this Auburn team, right? They made it to a Final Four. They're competing for SEC titles. And as good as Auburn's been in basketball in the past, it's not something that was kind of the recent history when he first showed up. So what is your level of expectation for this team heading into the season?
Well, as someone who has been watching this team all through the summer, you know, and I know what these kids are capable of, definitely higher than what they saw last year. They had a huge hole last year at point guard, you know, where Sharif was not eligible for the first, 20 games of the season or so. They were going with a true freshman named Justin Powell, and he kind of had his highs and lows, and then he got hurt. And they played Al Flanagan at point guard, and it was a mess. I mean, the season was just trashed because of that point guard situation. Now they brought in 2 new point guards, one named Zep Jasper, who was a graduate transfer from College of Charleston, and also Wen Green, who came in from Eastern Kentucky, a kid out of the north part of the, I think, Michigan, Detroit area. So he's now got 2 full-time point guards. And this team, he's added Jamar Smith, who was, I think, the number 4 player in the country last year in our network and Rivals, and also Walker Kessler, who's a kid that was a very highly rated guy in 2020, who went to North Carolina for 1 year. He's a big old center, but I'm telling you, he ain't stiff at all. This kid can run the floor, and he can actually shoot pretty well too. So when you think about all these new parts he's added, in addition to the guys he's got back, to me, the expectations will be certainly top half of the SEC, NCAA tournament. At Auburn, this is crazy talk. I mean, I went 15 or 20 years between seeing Auburn in an NCAA tournament. Now it's like, better get to the tournament or it's a failure of a season. That tells you how far Bruce has kind of pulled things up.
And so you mentioned Al Flanagan. I do want to touch on him a little bit. He's dealing with the Achilles injury. It sounds like it's not something that's going to be season ending, but it does sound like it's something the staff is going to be very, very careful with. You don't want, my understanding is it's he basically has a cut Achilles as opposed to a fully torn Achilles. You don't want to let that thing rupture. You don't want to deal with Achilles injuries. Those can be really, really bad for players long term. So if he's not there? I thought he was going to be the best player on their team coming into the season. He averaged, 14 a game last year.
Yeah.
Lefty, good shooter, good defender. So what kind of impact do you think his loss is going to end up being?
Well, it's a killer when he's not there. I mean, because he can do so many things. I would say he's the most improved player in the country last year, because as a freshman, he was not good. He was not a good player. And last year I thought he was a good player, and he improved in every category significantly. So he should have gotten that kind of commendation. So he's the guy that makes them go. He's their wing. He can shoot the 3 well. He's left-handed, so it kind of messes people up. He can also drive. He's good in transition. Not a real vocal leader, but he's a guy that just goes out there and gives you, 36 quality minutes every single night. Could go to 40 if they needed him to. I think it's really good that they caught this before it was a serious problem. They didn't realize he had an Achilles injury. Initially, it was just he was dealing with a lot of soreness, and it wouldn't quite go away. And they did an MRI and said, oh, my goodness, this thing is partially torn. That's a huge, huge thing. My dad was a radiologist, is a radiologist. He's seen a lot of MRIs of Achilles in his life, and he says having a partial tear is way better than having a rupture. So their plan is to have him back, getting back into shape in probably the second half of November, and then being able to play with the team in late December, and at least be able to get into conference season full power at that point. They've got to have him because they don't have another really good choice at the wing spot. It's going to be between a guy named Chris Moore, who to me is kind of a 7 guy on the bench, and And then also Devin Cambridge, who on his best night is an all-SEC player, and on his worst night probably belongs in the lower echelons of Division III.
Yeah, he's one of those boomer bust guys. I think is the best way to phrase it with Devin. You also mentioned, or you didn't mention Jaylen Williams, Jamar Smith. You did mention, and Walker Kessler. It's an interesting front line, and one that I think can give a lot of different looks. Right, like if they want to go real small and play real skill ball, you can put Jabari Smith at 5 if you need to, and all of a sudden you have 5 guys that can kind of play around the perimeter. Walker Kessler, big guy, rim runner, going to catch some dunks at the front of the rim, but he's also a guy that can step out and knock down a shot. So I think it's weird saying this as someone that's watched the Bruce Pearl, not just at Auburn, but at Tennessee and over the years. His strength is going to be the front court this season, right?
Yeah, I think so, because Jabari, I think right out of the box is going to be probably their best player without Al out there for sure. And then Walker would be the next best. So, I mean, if that's your 4 or 5 guys in the Bruce Pearl system, like you mentioned earlier, if you wanted to go a little bit smaller, 4 or 5 is kind of interchangeable. So I think Jabari could play 5 and it not be a big deal. For Auburn, the thing is 1, 2, 3. Those are kind of interchangeable. I don't think Jabari, a lot of people on my website think Jabari should play 3. Going from 4 to 3 in Bruce Pearl's system is basically a no-go at this point. So, yeah, you're right. I think the strength absolutely is going to be Kessler and Jabari, at least until Al gets back. And then when Al gets back, then it's 3, 4, 5. And you kind of wonder what you're going to get at the guard spots.
Yeah, so let's talk about those guards, because if you look at Bruce Pearl's teams over the years, whether it's Jared Harper or Sharif Cooper or Bryce Brown or Samir Dowdy or Bobby Mays when he was at Tennessee, his guards are normally killers, right? Like that's kind of what he builds his team around. You got someone that can push out in transition, that can make something in the half court. Wendell Green and Zep Jasper, you kind of touched on these guys. How difficult do you think that adjustment is going to be? Like we see some players go from the mid-major ranks to the high major ranks and thrive. Carlik Jones at Louisville is a perfect example. He's in the NBA now. Sometimes it doesn't always work out that way. So what are you expecting out of those two?
Yeah, those two very different. Zep has been playing so long at Charleston that my expectations are going to be higher for him, whereas Wen was a true freshman last year at Eastern Kentucky. In a situation at EKU where he had to score the ball all the time. I think he had a usage percentage of near 40%, which is insane for a true freshman.
That is.
Zep was more of a, harmonizer at College of Charleston. Zep is a better defender. Absolutely. And I think Zep is a more reliable ball handler. So when he's pressured a lot on the ball, Wen tends to make mistakes that Zep doesn't. So I think you're going to see Zep Jasper be the starter with this team for most of the, what's the way, barring injuries or anything like that. I just think Zep gives you something extra. Now, when Green does give you a lot of passion, he's a very energetic player, and he's a better long-range shooter, no doubt about it. So he's going to play a lot. The thing about Zep is this. He's such a good defender. He can defend 1, 2, 3, I think. He'd be a little undersized at 3, but he has long arms, and he's just an indefatigable guy. So you're going to see him move around a lot and play a lot at the different positions when as a point guard only. So that's kind of the difference between those two. One of the things that I mentioned earlier, their problems at point guard last year, but they were really soft with their perimeter defense last year. They did not have a good perimeter defender. And I don't like to use the word soft because it has this connotation of people don't want to work. It wasn't really that. They just didn't have a good defender out there. Now they've got some really plus ones. KD Johnson, who they got from Georgia, is going to play 2, maybe a little 3 if he needs to. That guy is as good a defender as I've ever seen at Auburn on the perimeter. He's physical. He's just insane, like in a good way. And then you've got Zep, who I think is an above-average defender too. So their perimeter defense is going to be taking a big step forward this year.
I like how you said insane in a good way. Is there any other way to be insane?
You could just be absolutely crazy, like Cam Newton.
Oh man, there we go. So for KD, I think that he's the guy that can really be, the X factor, the whatever cliche you want to throw out there. I feel like it's him because when he was at Georgia last year, he averaged like 13 points a game. He proved that he could succeed at the SEC level. You don't have to have that adjustment going to the high major level like with the other guards that transferred. And he's been there. He's experienced it. He's done it. The other part is that when he played for Tom Crean, they got out and ran probably more than Auburn does. So it feels like he automatically fits into what Auburn wants to do already. You don't have to, there's not really an adjustment, if that makes sense. So we kind of know what we're going to get out of Al Flanagan, or what we expect to get out of Al Flanagan when he comes back. Jamari Smith should be the guy. Walker Kessler is going to be your low post presence. We have a couple of point guards that can kind of figure it out with them, but KD to me is the guy where it's like, okay, if he comes in and he's a star, that's how you get to the next level with this group.
Yeah, and it's got to be him because at 2, I don't love their choices. I mean, basically Zep is the backup there, and I like Zep attacking wise. He's a good defender, but he ain't KD. And like you mentioned, Georgia likes to run that transition game. I think BP in a perfect world, when he has the point guards that he needs, like he does now, I think they're going to transition a lot more than they did last year. I think he really likes that. He really wants to do this positionless basketball type of stuff. Mm-hmm. He's pushing that really hard right now. I didn't necessarily believe him 2 years ago when he told me that, but the way he's recruiting now and the way they're kind of moving that direction, at least in the summer and so far in the fall, I think they're really going to push the tempo. So KD's going to be right at home with him. Outside of Jabari just being a next level talent and Walker being insanely good for what he is, I got to say KD is the most irreplaceable guy, though, because I don't see another bulldog defender like him on the roster. And also, again, like you mentioned, he can score the basketball, he can shoot the basketball, and I think he can give you 36, 37 minutes and not get tired. He's going to be a real problem for other opponents defending the basketball for sure.
And he knows what he is too. Like that's the other part of it. With Jamar Smith, it's a little bit of, we got to figure out exactly what he's going to be able to provide as a freshman moving up to a new level. Right. Like Walker Kessler is transferring in. He did not play a ton of minutes at North Carolina, but we kind of know the potential that he has. But KD, he does what he does, right? He defends, he gets out in transition, he can score. There's a value in having kind of that baked in role, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah, for sure. And he definitely has it. I don't really see a weakness with him at all. With Jabari, to me, like he's not an incredible athlete, but he's just a very skilled and polished player. I think he's gonna be fine. Walker, he has kind of this odd thing where he gets really mad at himself when he makes a mistake, even small ones. It's a simple turnover and a drill, and he loses his mind. And they're always working with him like, Walker, man, it's okay. You got to compartmentalize the mistakes. If there's going to be a limiting factor for Walker this year, it's going to be that. And again, Jabari, I think there'll be people who watch Jabari play and they say, he doesn't blow me away because he doesn't have that huge vertical that you would see out of the elite NBA players, but the polish that kid has at the age he is insane. He is going to score a lot of points. He's just not going to wow people with his athleticism.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't necessarily. Isaac Okoro didn't do that, and he ended up being a top 5 pick. So I don't think you necessarily. And that's not to say that Jabari and Isaac are the same. They're very different kind of players, but I think that the impact they could have is relatively similar. All right, so let me end it with this. The SEC, right, probably has 8 teams that you can pencil in pretty comfortably to make the NCAA tournament.
You're right. It's crazy how much it's changed in 10 years.
Yeah. And not only that, when Auburn made the Final Four in 2019, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, they finished 5th in the SEC that season. So
yeah, they were on they looked tuckered out, man, late in the regular season that year for sure. I had no idea they were going to the Final Four.
Yeah, I mean, they figured out that's the dangerous thing about these Auburn teams is they run, they turn you over, and they hit a lot of threes. And if they happen to go on that 2-week stretch where they're not missing and they're 14 for 32 every single night, like that, they're going to be tough. And I think we could see that out of them again. So how difficult is it going to be to kind of work through that SEC schedule? It's going to be, we talk about the grind of the Big Ten a lot, the grind of the Big 12. Like it's like that in the SEC too. So how difficult is it to get through that schedule with a group of new guys and then head into the NCAA tournament and kind of keep that momentum going?
Yeah, it's going to be a grind, man. I mean, they have to stay healthy. They have to get Al back and stay healthy because we talked about the guys before. They got to have Jabari, they got to have Walker, they got to have KD, and they got to get Al back just for leadership purposes. And you look at it again. I mean, Alabama 3 or 4 years ago was an easy win. Now they got to play them 2 times, and they're really, really tough. Mm-hmm. LSU's tough. Ole Miss has always caused BP problems because of the way Kermit changes his defenses so quickly and gives them a different look every time. He has a hard time scouting them. So yeah, there's no easy outs unless you're playing Vanderbilt, but then Scottie Pippen might tear you up. So there's just no easy way to go. And, I always think back to Mike's Live telling them 15, 17 years ago, we've got to fix this basketball problem because how it used to be. Florida with Billy Donovan, Kentucky was good for a long time. And it was like, who else maybe is decent this year? And Mike's Live told them, you have to fix this and it's up to you. And now you look at it, the SEC's got, as you mentioned, 8 legitimate NCAA tournament teams. And who knows if the other, 4 can slide in there and be something too. You better be ready every single night. And that's when Auburn fans come to me and say, we got all these players, I think this is our year. It's like, well, hold on. They not only do they have to have the talent, they've got to have the know-how to push through the schedule, like you mentioned. And you get into February and you played 3 games in 8 days or whatever. It takes a different level, mentally. And you got to get Jabari thinking like that. You got to get Walker thinking like that because he's never played every single night like this. So it's going to take a mental adjustment. And generally, BP does a good job with that. But I think people who go in thinking championship or bust, I don't know about that. I think you try to get the NCAA tournament.
You can't do championship or bust. Like you
No.
can say we think that we should be able to make it to the Final Four of the SEC tournament. We think that we need to be in the top 4 of the SEC regular season. We should be making the second weekend of the NCAA tournament, or at least threatening to make the second weekend. But I mean, championship or bust in this SEC, that's a big ask, man. That's a big ask.
I know, man.
I'm going to put it into context for everyone, just so they know. We mentioned that there are 8 teams that I think you can really pencil in for the tournament from the SEC. That does not include the team coached by Kermit Davis. It does not include the team coached by Buzz Williams. It doesn't include the team coached by Frank Martin. It doesn't include the team coached by Konzo Martin. And it doesn't include the team coached by Tom Crean. There is a lot of coaching talent in that conference that we're like, yeah, I don't know if they're going to make the tournament this year. Think about it. That's crazy.
Yeah, that it's the SEC, that's what the Big Ten used to be like. And
exactly. So
they've done it the right way. But I'm telling you, you mentioned BP I've never seen a coach connect with his fan base the way that BP has done here. I mean, he's just, everybody loves him. He's like Ferris Bueller, and he gets people thinking championships, and the Final Four to them was like, all right, he got us there. Let's keep it going. And they make it seem like that's just where they should be going every year. And you can have an awesome team, and you can't make it through that tournament without having some breaks go their way. And
that's the sport, though. The NCAA tournament is the best way to determine a champion and the worst way to determine the best team. Got to get hot at the right time. You got to put yourself in a good position to be able to have a chance. And you get enough dice rolls at it, eventually it's going to work. We saw that happen with Auburn 2019. I think they have a team that'll be good enough to put themselves in that position again this season. Jay, it's always a pleasure, man. Thanks for jumping on and doing this with me.
Appreciate you, man.